Row 7 will be Satoru Nakajima of Japan in the second Tyrrell, next to the Ligier Lamborghini V12 of Terry Boutsen of Belgium. Row 8, Pierluigi Martini of Italy in the Minardi 12-cylinder Ferrari, 6th in the morning warm-up. At his elbow, J.J. Leto of Finland in the Dallara Judd. Row 9, Martin Brundle of Great Britain in the second Brabham Yamaha, next to Eric Bernard of France in the LaRousse Lola Ford. Row 10, Aguri Suzuki of Japan in the second LaRousse, next to Bertrand Gachot of Belgium in the second Jordan. Row 11 is Paul Leighton House with the Ilmor V10, Mauricio Guglielmin of Brazil and Italian Ivan Capelli. Row 12 will be Gianni Morbidelli of Italy in the second Minardi, next to the Lotus of Mika Hakkinen of Finland, just 22 years old. The 13th and final row, Johnny Herbert of Great Britain in the second Lotus, next to the Footwork 12-cylinder Porsche of Michele Alboreto of Italy. Those who missed the cut, Eric Comas of France, who was very fast in practice, but couldn't get it done in qualifying in the Ligier. Gabriele Tarquini of Italy missed out in the AGS Ford, as did his teammate Fabrizio Barbazza. Stefan Johansson of Sweden missed in the other Footwork Porsche. Those who failed to pre-qualify, Nicola Larini of Italy in the Lambo car, who actually made the field but was disqualified for a wing violation. His teammate Eric Van der Poel of Belgium also out, along with Emanuele Pirro of Italy in the Dallara, a regular starter this year, but his car broke down during the pre-qualifying session. And the poor little Coloni of Pedro Chavez of Portugal also will not start today. A very interesting course here, named for Ricardo and Pedro Rodriguez, Mexico's tragic racing heroes. Let's get a closer analysis now with Derek Daly.
This circuit is 2.7 miles in length, very, very bumpy, right-handed circuit with a straight-line speed along the front straight of about 195 miles an hour before they get very hard on the brakes into the Moesis Solana complex, which is a right-left, right-handed complex, about 100 miles an hour. Then they shoot along about 155 miles an hour into El Estadio. Then they go into this very fast, very demanding S's. Third gear, then fourth gear, then fifth gear, exit about 125 miles an hour along the back stretch to 165 miles an hour. Then they go into La Perotada, in my best Spanish, which is the nearest Formula One drivers will get to oval track racing. It's banked. It's very, very fast, about 145 miles an hour through the corner, and then they come onto the long front stretch again. If you can do that one time and then 69, you're going to have a good day.
And it's a bad day for doing it. We'll have 69 laps in 85-degree heat. It's quite dry, but there is a very good chance of rain. Let's get last-minute tips now from John Bizignano.
Bob, as the cars come up to the grid, there have been quite a few cars with a lot of work on them very quickly. Nigel Mansell's in the T car. They changed the engine on his race car, and there was an oil leak. He's in the T car. He has had time on that car this weekend out on the circuit, but he has to be a bit uncomfortable with it. He was a little bit annoyed that they couldn't find the oil leak. Petraeus says he's ready to win. Berger, lots of attention around the motor, and I saw them trying to close up an oil leak right on the grid itself. Watch for some smoke coming out of there. Senna, his sway bars were changed. That will help handling on the rear. And the big story is John Alesi and the Ferrari took off both right corners this morning, and they have built that car back up. He's not in the T car. He's in his race car. A great effort on the Ferrari mechanics' part.
The cars begin to pull to their positions on the grid. To the right of your screen, all-setter Ricardo Patrese marginally just a few feet in front of his teammate Nigel Mansell to the left. Recall 2 weeks ago in Montreal, Mansell got the better start and simply ran away from the field. Now there are a great number of other variables that will play in today's race. 7,400 feet of altitude, smaller wings than they used last year, which will combine to rob the cars of downforce, 20% down on engine power. So the drivers really are racing in a very different kind of situation here today.
Without a doubt, the Formula One starts are one of the most exciting and sometimes most dangerous times in all of auto racing.
There is the green flag, the red light. We have yellow flags in the background. One car may have failed to start. You see the firemen out on the racetrack in the yellow uniform. Now more drivers' hands going up.
Red flag. We have a red flag. Start is delayed. This is a safety factor they've built in because we've seen many start line crashes before when you have a standing start. But somebody, we're not sure yet who, at the back of the grid failed to start, so they call a halt to everything for 5 minutes.
And there you see the smoke from the car of J.J. Leto of Finland, the number 22 Dallara. He will get to start in another car, but he'll have to do so from the back of the grid. We'll take a quick timeout and sort it all out when we return to the circuit. Hermanos Ricardo and Pedro Rodriguez after 2 aborted attempts at starting the Grand Prix of Mexico. For the full story, let's get down to the pit lane and John Bizignano.
Well, Bob, I don't know if we will know the full story right here at first. J.J. Leto caused the first red light to stay on. There was an overheating problem on his Dallara, and some very enthusiastic marshals came over the guardrail and sprayed it with some fire extinguisher. They have cleaned that up. He is working on his third warm-up lap, but the temperatures in that car are extremely high. The second red light was kept on because of Olivier Guyard in the Fonmello car. That's the old Estella team. They say that he waved off the second start. He says, no, guys, I didn't. I only started to wave as I saw other drivers waving. But they blamed it with him. He had to stay in his position until all the cars left. He is now going to start from the very back of the grid. Terrible luck for this struggling Italian team. The reason they don't drop the green light is because these cars that are stalled on the grid are like brick walls, and the cars coming by them at well over 100 miles an hour certainly don't want to meet them in that standing position.
Thank you, John. One of those brick walls is now being pushed down the starting grid. Michele Alboretto's footwork Porsche. Problems continue for the Porsche team as they try to re-enter Formula One. They can't get their car started. The mechanics are going to have to push it off. If he does restart, it will be from the back of the field. Derek, 2 attempts at a Formula One start. One of the most anxious moments for any driver. What does it do to your psyche to have to do it 3 times?
Well, this is also one of the most dangerous times in racing. Your heartbeat goes to such a high fever pitch, you want to see that green light. But when it doesn't happen, these guys are trained and they're such good athletes. They know there's something wrong. There's no point in expressing emotion or outrage. They just settle down, calm down. And the only thing that will be in their mind is, I hope I don't have to make too many starts on my clutch, because these clutches are not designed to do a lot of repeated starts. Remember, they don't have many pit stops here.
Let's get down to the pit lane now with more from John.
Derek and Bob, the problem with the footwork car is it was spewing water out the back of it. Not only is there a problem with clutches, but of course all these cars are very, very hot. They should be a half an hour into the race, and all that motor is going under stress and strain from starting. It is the hardest part on the car, and now it's time 3 for them. Let's hope they make it.
And the capacity crowd here at the circuit, Hermanos Ricardo y Pedro Rodriguez in Mexico City, is getting a little bit unruly. They want to see this race get underway. For a 3rd time, the cars will form up. 25 starters now. The 26th, Michele Alboretto, is sitting in the pit lane. There you see Frank Williams, whose team came so close 2 weeks ago in Montreal, only to have Nigel Mansell's car roll to a stop less than a mile from the checkered flag after leading the entire race.
Now, Petresi's on the pole. He is on the left-hand side, but the first turn is on the right side, so Mansell only needs to get alongside Petresi.
Here is our 3rd green flag. Up come the RPMs. Here comes Senna to the left. It is going to be Mansell first to the corner, followed by Patrese, but there is still a long way to go. This is a drag race to the first corner in Mexico.
Look at the Ferrari down the inside of Senna. Will he make it? Yes, he does, down the inside.
One of the Benettons locked him up as well.
That was a Lacey, goes straight through to second place, but a great start by Nigel Mansell. Down the inside, took the corner from Petresi, just like he did in Canada.
It looked like a Lazy took second place in the Ferrari after a mad dash up the grass side. Now Senna joined to the inside as they head into the Estadio, the tightest section of the racetrack.
Then, unaccustomed to having to fight this hard in the opening laps of the pit, look at Frank Williams has a look, very calm and somber look as Mansell, he knows, leads, but the Ferrari is second, Senna is third, and Petresi drops back to 4th place.
Cars are on full tanks, running in this thin air. Handling is always a problem in Mexico City. The track is also very smooth. Cars will get a lot of wheel spin, and you saw Mansell get a little bit foot happy there coming through the S's.
First lap, you got to heat the tires up. Mansell told me, though, the reason these cars look so unstable, they have to be set up very loose, right on the verge of oversteer, because if they're not, they're just slow.
There was a pass attempt coming out of the last of the S's onto this short straightaway, rushing down to La Peraltada, one of the most intimidating corners in motorsport. And we've got side-by-side racing into the corner. The crowd goes bananas as Nigel Mansell comes around to complete lap 1 in the lead.
Look at Senna down the inside of a Lacey. Senna did pick some of the downforce off this car to increase his straight line speed. He moves over on the Ferrari and takes second place.
Senna doing battle with a Lazy akin to what they had in Phoenix a year ago when a Lazy was in the Tyrrell and they passed each other twice.
My word, as Senna takes the position, then he tries to protect it. Jigs all across the racetrack trying to block Senna making, a Lazy making a move down the inside after he took the position away from him.
There is Mansell, followed by Senna, Alesi, Patrese. Looks like Berger. Nelson Piquet trying to make a pass. There goes Alain Prost in one of the red Ferraris. He's well back in the field. It is Mansell, Alesi, Senna, Patrese, Berger, Piquet, Modena, De Cesaris, Moreno, and Boutsen in the top 10.
Senna now pulling away from Alesi. Remember, Alesi did crash quite heavily in the warm-up this morning. They did repair the car. This is the same car he did crash. But now Senna has his eyes set on Mansell.
What a weekend in Mexico City. This racetrack is set in a park in the center of Mexico City. It's a very hazy day. Huge crowds on hand. And we have been getting afternoon thunder showers each day. Mansell with Senna now dropping back a little bit. There's a rearward-looking camera. I'll try to figure out whose car that is on. One of the Tyrrells running behind. I don't think it's on either of our cars carrying forward-looking cameras, the Ferraris and the McLarens, because there's not a Tyrrell running nose-to-tail with a McLaren or a Ferrari on the track.
In fact, it's Gerhard Berger, and the sparks that we see coming off the back of the car, no problem with the engines. In fact, the rubbing strips made of titanium rubbing on the ground. This is how low they must run these cars, virtually on the ground as much as possible.
2 laps complete. Mansell, Senna, Alesi, Patrese, Berger, and Modena. You're right, Derek. It was Modena's camera looking back. Berger's camera looking back at Modena's Tyrrell.
We see the sparks all along this short straight here where the cars bottom out. There's one of the Jordan cars, Andrea De Cesaris. Very, very good in qualifying here. That Jordan car really showing a lot of the experienced teams just what a new, young, and very small team can do.
They scored 4th and 5th places, points in only their 5th Formula One Grand Prix ever at Montreal 2 weeks ago, reducing team owner Eddie Jordan to tears. We could see more such heroics today in Mexico City. Is Nigel Mansell, the leader, followed by Ayrton Senna. Then your pole sitter, Ricardo Patrese, Jean Alesi dropping from 3rd to 4th.
Patrese has been very impressive, fastest in almost every session he ran here, but he has been very sick all weekend. Said this morning that he did feel a little bit better, but Patrese now makes the move on Alesi, sets his sights on Senna, but Mansell still well in control. And yesterday, during the last session, Mansell was by far the fastest and most impressive man on the racetrack.
Now Senna begins to close it up a little bit. Patrese moving up as well. Patrese in his 214th Formula One start. The all-time record holder.
Nigel Mansell told me this is the bumpiest racing circuit in the world. Now, that might have been a slight exaggeration, but it just gives you an idea just how bumpy this racetrack is. And, of course, it's such a high-speed racetrack. See the cars bob and weave as they turn left here. This is a 150-mile-an-hour corner onto this short back straight before the long, long, long right-hander.
Now Senna becoming under fire from Patrese. There is Berger holding up a train that includes Modena, Piquet, De Cesaris, and Moreno.
Luckily for Mansell, Patrese is going to move up on Senna because he needs to keep him busy. As long as Senna tries to hold off Patrese, he really can't set his sights on attacking Mansell. He's going to have to protect the position. When you do that, he'll change your line. Look at Modena come down the inside of Berger. Has a look, but look at Piquet right behind Modena.
This is the battle for 5th on the racetrack. Berger followed closely by Modena and Piquet. The gap now 9/10 of a second from leader Mansell back to Senna. Nigel doing just what he did at Montreal 2 weeks ago, getting the jump at the start and slowly drawing away from the field. I think the consensus up and down the pit lane, Derek, is that the Williams cars are the fastest in Formula One right now.
They really are, particularly with this electronic gearbox they have. Interesting, the top 6 cars at the moment are all Honda and Renault. 4 Hondas and 2 Renault cars. But the Renault Williams, when everything works properly, this is the fastest car here. It rides the bumps better than the McLaren also. The McLaren feel that their engine power is maybe not as good as they had hoped or expected with that new V12.
Well, Ayrton Senna has been adamant in every press conference since the beginning of the year. I'm working as hard as I can. There you see Patrese coming up as they go into the Peraltada.
Oh, we saw Senna look in his mirrors, too. Right before he turned, he took a quick look, saw Patrese wasn't in a challenging position, and then turned down. But Senna has his hands full with Patrese.
Oh, we've got a blown engine at the back of the pack there. Heavy blow, and it is Berger. Gerhard Berger has lost the Honda V12 in the back of his McLaren, and he is spewing coolant, it would appear, all down the inside of the racetrack. But he's well off the racing line. You're looking out the back of his car now.
Now, Burger Blue coming through La Peraltada, which is the fastest corner.
Pierluigi Martini in one of the Minardis is off on the grass and stopped cold.
Oh, I wonder, did he go off on the oil? I think he might have. That's the oil flag. Martini is off the road. And I would venture to say that might have been caused by Berger's oil.
He appears to be all right, having gotten out of the car. I think he is down there in the Peraltada, just where Senna went off and had that incredible flip.
Burger Blue right in the middle of the corner. I wouldn't think there was even time to get the oil flags out before the rest of the cars came through. And looks as if Martini was an innocent bystander here. We see the tire barrier there. They try to pull the car away, but that sand trap really absorbs a lot of the speed that the car has when it leaves the racetrack, and then of course it hits these tire barriers, which are tremendous energy absorbing sources.
So we have two cars out of the race in one fell swoop. Gerhard Berger blows his engine. Pierluigi Martini spins on the fluids that came out. Our pictures coming to you from the Mexican television network Imevision. Nigel Mansell completes the lap, and yes, back there in the Peraltada, you see the flags waving, warning the drivers of the oil. Mansell by 1.4 seconds over Senna, with Patrese now dropping back an equal amount behind the second-place McLaren.
Patrese lost a little bit on that lap. Obviously, he either tried to make a move down the inside of Senna, or else he just backed off a little bit. But he lost probably 6 or 7 car lengths, so I dare say it'll probably take him about 2 or 3 laps to make that up again on Senna. But Patrese looked as if he had a little bit of speed over Senna.
We started out under very hazy and cloudy conditions here. You can see the sun is beginning to poke through. We're getting some harsh shadows, and that will change the setup equation one more time for these cars.
There are no pit stop plans here. I spoke to Mansell right before. He said the only reason he would have to make a pit stop is if he blisters tires. He will not wear the tires out because there's not enough friction here on this surface. But there is a lot of sliding. That causes a lot of temperature in the tires, which can cause blistering. But there are no plans for pit stops.
Nigel Mansell perhaps doesn't get the credit he deserves if you saw Gerhard Berger walking off there and refusing to talk to people. But he is with John Visignano now. Down in the pit lane, John is trying to get an interview with Gerhard Berger. Watch Nigel Mansell coming down to complete his lap. That will make 7 laps complete of 67 now planned. If I can keep that straight in my head. We started with 70 planned, then ran 3 reconnaissance laps. Now let's down to the pit lane and John.
Gerhard Berger, a very exciting first few laps, but then a big plume of smoke. What went wrong?
Engine didn't work straight away from the beginning. Straight away from the start, I had no power, and then it just exploded.
Could that have been because of the overheating, because of so many starts?
I don't know, but I don't think so. The temperature was okay if I start to run.
Gerhard Tuppel, thank you.
And with Gerhard Berger out of the race, your order is now Mansell, Senna, Patrese, Alesi, Stefano Modena 5th, Andre de Cesaris moves up to 6th, Nelson Piquet to 7th, Roberto Moreno to 8th, Alain Prost is 9th, J.J. Leto is 10th. Fastest lap has gone to Andre de Cesaris. We may see that Jordan in the thick of this one before it's done. Stay with us. You'll notice that the boys from Brazil have dominated the last day's race. Nelson Piquet and Ayrton Senna between them have swept the last 7 Formula One races going back to Japan a year ago. But thus far, in 1991 in Mexico City, it is all Nigel Mansell. There you see Ayrton Senna, the runaway points leader in the World Championship right now, who won the first 4 races of the season, only to see his streak come to an end 2 weeks ago in Montreal when Nelson Piquet won. Here comes Jean Alesi, who started in the car that he wrecked this morning in the warm-up.
John Alesi has been quite spectacular here. He's a very unusual driving style. When you watch him out on the racetrack, he leans his head way, way more out of the cockpit than anybody else does. But we see his teammate, Alain Prost, who really has not had a happy weekend here, now sets fastest lap.
Alain Prost started way back in 7th position with his teammate Alesi way up in 4th. You are on board with Ayrton Senna.
Practice, he did 195 miles an hour down this long straight. And watch how bumpy it is under braking. Very, very bumpy. Upsets the camera, upsets the picture. This is a 100-mile-an-hour complex. He changes gear right here, takes his hand off, back on the wheel to regain control. But look at Patrese. Patrese is back up at Senna, and Mansell is inching away. Look at him bump over that bump under braking.
With 9 laps of 67 schedule completed, is Mansell by 1.6 seconds over Senna. Patrese right there at Senna's gearbox. Nigel Mansell says he feels like the Lion of England, racing with the Williams team once again. He was with them when they had the all-conquering V6 Honda turbocharged engine back in the mid-'80s. Then he left to go to Ferrari for a couple of seasons. Now he is back with Williams, and he did not leave Ferrari under the best of circumstances. He made a lot of acrimonious remarks about Alain Prost, his new teammate, taking over the team. Now he is presented with evidence in the French press that Prost is thinking about making overtures to the Williams team, and Mansell has been very vocal and very upset about it this weekend in Mexico City. Prost, however, has 1 year remaining on his Ferrari contract, but in the last few years we've seen what contracts mean in Formula One.
You see that plume of sparks coming out from the front wing of Mansell's car. They have running blocks on the bottom of that front wing also. They use it to seal the front wing to the road, which increases the downforce of those front wings. They're designed to last for the full race. Oh, Petresi down the inside of Senna. Now we have a Williams 1-2.
As we did in Montreal 2 weeks ago, it is Mansell and Petresi now 1-2. Senna drops to third ahead of Jean Alesi, Stefano Modena, Andre De Cesaris still moving up through the field. Nelson Piquet passed by De Cesaris. He is running just ahead of his Benetton teammate, Roberto Moreno. Alain Prost is faded to ninth. J.J. Leto, the car that caused the first start of this race to be aborted, is now 10th.
Oh, now we have a really interesting situation because Petresi has been faster than his team leader in almost every race. In Canada, Mansell shined, and he really did, except he didn't win the race. But Petresi, even this morning, in the warm-up, was faster than Mansell. Mansell was not happy, but they changed the engine in the car. But look at Petresi. He's away from Senna, and he's inching towards Mansell.
The Williams team was asked this week if there are team orders. And look at Petresi close up on Mansell. Petresi says, no, there are no orders. The faster man will win. And Petresi says he is here to win.
These are two very, very aggressive drivers. Those of you Formula One fans will remember Phoenix when Petresi came down the inside of Mansell, and if Mansell didn't let him go, there would have been a crash. But look at Petresi now. He throws it right up. Mansell moves down to the inside. Look at this. He's making Petresi go down the outside.
Mansell doing a little bit of defensive driving with his teammate right there in his mirrors. But Petresi just closes right up. He's driving with a lot of confidence.
There is no doubt Petresi has the speed, and we see it here. 1 minute 21.1. He did a 19.7 in the warm-up this morning. So Petresi, the fastest man on the track, but catching Mansell is one thing, passing in is another. We could be in for some excitement.
Oh, Frank Williams is no doubt sitting in the pits wondering what will happen when his two men come together.
Remember, Mansell makes 10 times more money than Petresi. So every time Petresi gets in the car, he has a point to prove. Look at this. He is all over Mansell.
There are lots of places to pass on this racetrack, and one of them is coming up shortly when they spill out onto the back straightaway. Petresi will have to get closer to his teammate, though, if he's going to get that pull, get into the dirty air, as they call it, behind Mansell's car.
Frank Williams has said recently he has never seen Riccardo Petresi so motivated, and it's amazing how motivation brings the speed. But Mansell said he was delighted that he went there and that he's able to motivate a driver like Riccardo Petresi, who's one of the most experienced men here.
Riccardo Petresi began his career back in 1977, and he took a lot of grief in his early years. He was blamed in part for the accident in Italy that claimed the life of Ronnie Peterson in 1978. In fact, he was shunned by his fellow drivers, perhaps the only driver that has ever happened to in Formula One. He says it was all terribly unfair. He carried the bitterness of it with him through his entire Formula One career, more starts than any other man in history, and he is driving better than he ever has now that he's in front row equipment with the Williams team.
Now this is interesting. Petresi catches Mansell in the slower parts of the racetrack on the long, fast Paroltada onto the front stretch. Mansell exits faster and gets away down the front straight. But look at Petresi now, all over him when it comes to these fast S's.
Right up the gearbox. They may have marginally different aerodynamic setups that allows one to get a little better top-end speed and the other corners better. On board with Jean Alesi, looking up ahead of the gearbox of Ayrton Senna. Senna just watching the battle going on in front of him, but he's got to be careful because this young lion behind him will take him if he gives him any opportunity whatsoever. Real exciting race thus far. You saw that Jean Alesi has gotten around Ayrton Senna, so the order is now Mansell, Petresi, Alesi has passed Senna. Stefano Modena has Andre De Cesaris all over him. There's a great five-car battle going on for fifth between Modena, De Cesaris, Piquet Moreno, and Alain Prost. But the battle up front is between teammates. Nigel Mansell has led from the green light. Riccardo Patrese has moved up from 4th position and is now right there looking for a way by.
And there's no doubt Patrese is faster than Mansell at the moment. Mansell is holding him up a little bit. But as I said, passing is one, catching is one thing, passing is the other. Now Mansell is fast here. He's fast for the next long right-hander. We'll watch him pull out. Look, 2 car lengths here. So I don't think Patrese can make his move here. This is the long right-hander, La Peraltada, in my best Irish accent Spanish. But there Patrese loses a little bit. Now he pulls up a little bit here. He can make a move here.
And the crowd comes to its feet, pumping their fists. Nigel Mansell drifts to the middle of the track. He is blocking his teammate. There's no doubt about it. And Patrese goes down the outside. Now he's got to get across the bow of his teammate. Mansell will not let him back in. They jockey back and forth, and both of them light up the tires.
My word, now they're side by side. Patrese on the outside.
I like Frank Williams too, but let's not see him now. They are side by side, and Patrese. No, yes, Patrese has taken the lead.
Riccardo Patrese will remember that moment because that was side-by-side, wheel-to-wheel racing, which is most unusual in Formula One. But Mansell made him earn every inch of road he needed to use.
The pass was made cleanly, and now look at the gap that Riccardo Patrese, and the spin from Alesi. Alesi has gone around in a cloud of smoke. He kicks the car back around. We'll see how many places he's lost. There is Alesi. He was in 3rd place when he spun. I know Senna got by him. I don't know if Stefano Modena was that close.
Yes, he did.
Yep.
Modena also got by, but Alesi couldn't stand the excitement of what he saw ahead of him, lost concentration, threw the Ferrari into a 360. Now he has to start working hard all over again. Patrese throws a rip-off away.
And look at the gap he has opened over Mansell. Riccardo Patrese is just running away from this field.
Is it a rip-off or a tear-off?
To get it off, if it's full of oil.
Now, just look at the lead he has on Mansell. Patrese, we said, looked like the fastest car on the racetrack. Now he's, what, 2 or 3 seconds ahead? Senna is now 3rd, and 4th, I believe, is it Modena?
4th place is Stefano Modena, who got around the spinning Jean Alesi.
Oh, we saw Piquet try to slide down the inside of Modena, so he has his hands full. And Andrea De Cesaris in the 7-Up Jordan car is in a very strong 6th place.
Boy, if we could only get some passing in Formula One, this would be great. It is Patrese who got around his teammate Nelson Piquet roaring up through the field. He has gone around Stefano Modena. Andrea De Cesaris right there in the Jordan car. And Roberto Moreno in the 2nd Benetton, also part of that fight. Alain Prost staying back there, the defending champion in this race. He may just be babying those tires. He may have something up his sleeve before this day is run.
I don't think Nigel Mansell's a happy man because no sooner did Patrese go by him, but now look what's happening. He's actually falling back into the clutches of Senna. So I don't think Mansell's handling is right to his liking because earlier we saw him be so fast. Now he's dropping back.
Mansell 3.1 seconds behind his teammate last time by. There you see Mansell in 2nd place, Senna in the red and white Marlboro car. And right behind him, Nelson Piquet is coming through this field.
Remember, Piquet is on Pirelli tires. Pirelli tires, very often when it gets very hot and humid, do work very well. We've seen it before. So Piquet making very good use of those Pirellis at the moment.
There's Andrea De Cesaris moving up in the green car in the back. Yes, indeed. With 16 laps complete of 67 scheduled. You're watching Ayrton Senna. There is Nigel Mansell. There is Senna right there. And Piquet followed by the Jordan of Andrea De Cesaris. Riccardo Patrese has reset fast lap. And since he is the leader, that means he is continuing to draw away.
He is probably the most relaxed man in the pit lane here. Always has a smile on his face. Just nice and casual, nice and cool. Gets into his race car. Everybody likes him, does the job, and really has impressed just about everybody down the pit lane. There's not a journalist now that you speak to that does not say they've never seen Riccardo Patrese drive as well.
4.5 seconds, the gap from Patrese to Mansell.
He's in total control. Just look at the gap he's pulled out now. Total control for Patrese. Mansell now edges away from Senna just a little bit, but Piquet, look at Piquet close up on Senna. Pirelli versus Goodyear here, but Piquet about to fill Senna's mirrors.
Mexico City was the site of a tremendous passing duel last year between Gerhard Berger and Nigel Mansell, and thus far in this race it's taken up right where it left off. Two Brazilians not terribly fond of one another. Ayrton Senna, followed by Nelson Piquet. 5 world championships between them. There is Senna. You have to go back to last year to find any series of races in which Senna missed 2 poles in a row. I'll get this concept formulated here in a second. In France and Britain last year, Nigel Mansell took 2 straight poles for Ferrari. Now Riccardo Patrese has taken 2 straight. So Senna's in danger. Well, not really, but he's certainly taking a beating as far as reputation goes in qualifying. Now there's Alain Prost in the pit lane. Prost is bringing in the Ferrari, and he brings up his visor. He's undoing the belt. Alain Prost's day appears to be run. Let's get down to John Bizignano.
Bob, Alain Prost is coming in very slowly. That V12 is shut down. He's going to go into the garage, actually. This is legal in Formula One. They can go in and out of the garage. The yellow shirts of Ferrari all around. They're the #1 driver trying to get this car into the garage. They're going to do some serious work on here, but of course he's losing valuable time out on the track, and by now he cannot make it up.
So Prost drops out while running in 9th position. It is Patrese by 4.8 seconds over teammate Nigel Mansell for the Williams team, followed by Ayrton Senna, Nelson Piquet, Andre de Cesaris, and Roberto Moreno.
You're very concentrated, so you're not actually scared at all. So you only think, okay, now I have to do the best in this situation. Sometimes, like in Phoenix, I felt a little bit like one of these electronic games. You know, you have cars, you know that you're going to be pushed in it and really fast, and you can't brake, and you just have to go through it. So you have to prepare and really relax, and you say, okay, now. And then you have just to make the best.
My mind is empty because it's necessary to watch the race and only watch the race. This is very important for the concentration of the pilots.
There are a lot of things that are running in your mind, and everything is so quick. And then suddenly everything starts, and then you just have to drive and be careful, and then try to overtake people in front of you, and try to understand the tactics of the race. So it's a lot of emotion that are mixed together.
Lately I would like to be in a position to see the light, because normally the last 2 seasons I'm too far away from the green light.
In Formula One in general, you just sit in there, sit in the car, you go out, it's just a buzz. I mean, it's just like the biggest high you ever can get. You know, for me personally that goes, but it's just you, the machine, and you're out on the circuit, and you just make the most of it. It's just a fantastic feeling.
If you have a question you'd like asked of the Formula One driving fraternity, write it down and send it to us at Ask the Driver, P.O. Box 117, Plainville, Connecticut, 060620117. We'll ask it of the drivers and bring you a little montage of their answers. On the racetrack, there is Ayrton Senna with fellow Brazilian Nelson Piquet just behind him. The overall order: Riccardo Patrese, Nigel Mansell, Senna, Piquet, Andre de Cesaris, Roberto Moreno, John Alesi, J.J. Leto, Stefano Modena, and Bertrand Gachot filling out the top 10. Mark Blundell, Eric Bernard, Gianni Morbidelli are next, followed by Aguri Suzuki, Terry Boutsen in the Ligier, Martin Brundle in the Brabham, Ivan Capelli, Johnny Herbert, Mika Hakkinen, Michele Alboreto, and Satoru Nakajima. Alain Prost, Mauricio Gugelmin, and Olivier Grilliard officially out of the race, joining Gerhard Berger and Pierluigi Martini.
We continue to watch Senna being hounded by Nelson Piquet. This is the V8 engine versus the V12. Ron Dennis told me that they're not really happy with the V12 power. They're not sure that it's got everything it can give, so they're developing it. But of course, development cannot happen overnight. They really feel there's more power to come from this unit. So they're not too worried right at the moment. But his hands are full with Nelson Piquet. But look at Andrea de Cesaris, again in a V8 power car, and really, he's keeping up with Piquet.
One of the interesting elements of running in Mexico City, 7,400 feet of altitude, is perhaps not how much power your engine makes, but how much it loses to the thin air.
Well, that's right. It's a loss of about 20%. So that means, in fact, that you use less fuel because you make less power. So the cars here start with about 50 liters less fuel than they would for a normal Grand Prix of this length. That's why there's never a fuel consumption problem here. Another thing, the altitude, which is 7,400 feet here, effect is the cooling. The air is thinner, it doesn't go through the radiators as well, and it doesn't cool the engine as much. That's something else they must monitor. Oh, one of the Brabhams.
Martin Brundle with a big spin off in S's, hard into an earthen embankment there. He's taken off the wing, and I believe the right rear corner as well.
Martin Brundle did have a spin this morning during the qualifying session, knocked the nose cone off the car, was able to drive back. This is a very radical design of car here, a Yamaha V12 engine, but Martin Brundle, a wild ride, but no serious damage. He just gets out, jumps, and runs away.
So add him to the list, a very short list of attrition thus far in this race. John Bizignano down in the pit lane has more on what knocked Alain Prost out of this race.
Alain Prost, he said, please, John, if I go out there and talk to you, I'm going to have to talk to another 20 journalists. He's absolutely right. He told me that there was a progressive misfire in the car. He stayed out for a good 3 laps trying to cure it, hoping that it was only a bad plug or so, but it got progressively worse. He was losing positions, losing top line speed. He thought that he was a danger to the other competitors, and he pulled it in and shut it down.
Well, I can't say I agree with his reason for not talking to us, but I guess I have to agree with his reason for pulling off. As John began, you saw a replay of the accident suffered by Martin Brundle. The wheel came off the Brabham while he was in the corner.
Right rear wheel came off. We couldn't see whether it was the wheel that broke or the suspension, but that's what took Brundle out. A wild ride. Luckily, no serious damage because you can be going extremely fast here where Patrese is right now. But Martin Brundle is okay. Right rear wheel did come off. That caused the crash.
Reaching up past 190 miles an hour, Riccardo Patrese in the Williams with 12-cylinder, make that 10-cylinder Renault power, and some very interesting aspects of that engine, including a valve train that is run by compressed air.
Rather than valve springs. The valve springs are the things that cause the problem when you over-rev these cars. They physically cannot keep up with the speed that the valves want to run up and down at. So they use what they call a pneumatic system, compressed air, to open and close these valves.
There's John Alesi in the red Ferrari, and you can see an example of what Derek Daly was talking about earlier. Watch him lean his head over in the corners.
And particularly in the faster ones, he leans way, way into the turn. It really is quite unusual to watch, whereas someone like Mansell is so upright. And in fact, Mansell also wears a neck collar. He has broken his neck a couple of times in race cars. He does wear a neck collar at all times. But we saw there again, Alesi leans right into the corner. What would he do in Indianapolis?
He's got a sore neck. Running in 6th position, the red Ferrari of John Alesi, the only remaining car from the world-famous Scuderia, his teammate Alain Prost having dropped out. Riccardo Patrese is your leader, and we'll be right back. He flashes down the front straight. Meanwhile, over on the backside, there is Satoru Nakajima, and here comes your overall race leader, the number 6, blue and yellow and white Williams Renault of Riccardo Patrese, who keeps resetting fast laps.
In fact, about every 5 laps, Patrese throws in a new fastest lap, 19.1, which is way quicker than he went this morning on his full tank run. But Patrese totally in command. Look at his helmet, though. The only car that he followed was Nigel Mansell. And yet his helmet is covered with what seems to be oil smears and dirt. And that's obviously coming from the back of Mansell's car. That's why we saw him take that tear off or that rip off his helmet as soon as he passed Mansell. But he is totally in control. But just look at the way these cars move constantly over the bumps as they set up for the corners.
Those bumps are coming at them at 160 miles an hour or more at this part of the racetrack. Through La Pelotada, the pear-shaped corner that is the final corner here on the circuit named for Ricardo and Pedro Rodriguez in Mexico City. Moving up on Satoru Nakajima, the Japanese driver, in what is a very competitive car, the Tyrrell with the V10 Honda power that took Ayrton Senna to the World Championship last year. So perhaps Nakajima has a problem with his machine.
There is no doubt that Mansell has a problem with his because Patrese is just absolutely running away from him. We saw the gap along that long front stretch back to Mansell, but definitely Mansell, I don't think, has a car that he's happy with.
Let's learn more about the Williams situation now with John in the pit lane.
Bob, the track here in Mexico is a track of compromise. At 7,400 feet, as you said, there's 20% less horsepower on the engine, so the cars are set up very aerodynamically flat. These wing tabs on Mansell's car, I can see them right here on his spare car. They are quite high, and looking at Riccardo Patrese, wing tabs on the grid, they were set very much lower. That means that Riccardo Patrese has greater straight line speed, but the Mansell car may have a little bit more cornering. In the back of the car, Riccardo Patrese, they had the same size wing, but again, the tab, the control, the downforce, and the straight line speed were set extremely differently, with Riccardo Patrese going for the straight line speed and Nigel Mansell going for the handling. It reminds me of a quote from James Hunt. If you're going to give me an advantage, let it be down the straightaway, because that's the easiest place to pass.
Well, Riccardo Patrese is certainly doing his share of passing today. He leads teammate Nigel Mansell by some 13.3 seconds now. 1.4 seconds back of Mansell is Ayrton Senna in the McLaren Honda. Less than half a second behind Senna is Nelson Piquet in the Benetton. So Piquet may be planning a surprise for his Brazilian countryman before too long. Andrea de Cesaris now 1.2 seconds behind Piquet in 5th position for Eddie Jordan's team. John Alesi runs in 6th, Roberto Moreno in 7th, J.J. Leto 8th, Bertrand Gachot 9th. So both Jordan cars are in the top 10.
It's amazing how things change in Formula One. We saw the total domination for not just 4 races this season, for most of the last couple of seasons by McLaren. But Williams were always strong this year, but they weren't reliable. And really, a lot of people felt if they could get the package to last, this car would be the one to beat. But it's hard to imagine McLaren being outpaced as much as they are here.
There's no greater pressure than a great potential, and there's a lot of pressure on the Williams-Renault team. Renault publishes a series of press releases before each Formula One event, and they have been very straightforward lately. They say we want to win races this year, and we need to win the World Championship next year, or there may be a bit of a rethink over in France.
The only reason manufacturers go racing in Formula One is to win. Second place is a cause for long faces and depression at the end of these races. You win or you don't do anything. That's the bottom line.
Nobody on the racetrack right now with Riccardo Patrese. He's got clear track in front of him. Satoru Nakajima, the car in the background there. There goes John Alesi in the Ferrari. Now we are back with Nigel Mansell as our pictures from Imavision Mexican television jump around the racetrack. Mansell, well, we don't know if he has a problem. He still manages to keep that gap back to the red and white car right there of the man in the yellow helmet. The dominator in Formula One in the last 3 or 4 seasons, Ayrton Senna of Brazil.
And has had his fair share of incidents over the last couple of weeks, not least of which we saw at the opening of the show when he had a very spectacular crash here, flipped upside down. But he arrived here with stitches in the back of his head. He was at his beach house in Brazil, playing around on his jet ski, fell off, and one of his friends, not his enemies, one of his friends, ran over him and he got stitches in the back of his head. So Senna very much in the wars over the last 10 days.
Senna said he tried to keep his stitches a secret, but somebody found out about 2 days ago. And there have been lots of jokes about how Senna needs another loss here like a hole in his head. He already has one of those.
Anything Senna does is big news. I'm sure in Brazil, 2 or 3 stitches probably became major head surgery by the time the press got a hold of it. Look at de Cesaris, though. Very impressive. Right up behind Nelson Piquet. Piquet not able to... Oh, look at de Cesaris. Has to look down the inside.
These cars are running with engines made by the same manufacturer, the Cosworth Company, under license from Ford. Piquet supposedly has the better, the newer, the more highly developed engine. But Eddie Jordan and this team in these green cars, Bertrand Gachot and Andrea de Cesaris, are really earning some respect in Formula One. This is their 6th race all time.
I would have to say this is probably the most impressive new team that has come into Formula One in many years. There are people up and down the pit lane that says if this team continues to improve, they'll begin to beat us all in the time to come. Now remember also the engine that is a V8 Ford powered car, but they do not have this exotic fuel that a lot of the teams are using. Piquet uses it, and they believe it's worth about 30 horsepower. That's a lot of horsepower. De Cesaris does not have that. Imagine what it would be like if he did.
As you watch Ayrton Senna, Andrea de Cesaris begins to close in behind him. You mentioned how everything Senna does is big news in Brazil. The Jordan team is basically an Irish outfit. You're an Irishman, Derek. What do you suppose the newspapers in Dublin are making out of it?
Oh, they love the Irishman out there doing battle with the world's best. It is great to see it, because, I know when I was trying to raise some finance in Ireland, they really didn't understand racing to a great extent. But now they actually have a team and a car to look at. Ireland is on the side. It gets a great promotion on a worldwide level, and really, everybody should be proud of it. Look at Alesi down the inside of Piquet also.
Was he able to make it? No. There's Piquet. I think the red Ferrari still just behind him. We continue to shuffle positions. There is Andre de Cesaris. There is Nelson Piquet. There is Jean Alesi. Patrese is still pulling away from the field. We'll be right back.
Look at Hermanos Rodriguez and sight of round 6 of the 1991 Formula One World Driving Championship. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of Mexico is being brought to you by Ektar Film from Kodak. For the advanced photographer, the genius is in the details.
Welcome back to Mexico, where 7,400 feet of altitude is affecting race cars and our commentators' ability to talk. Here comes one of the Benettons into the pit, and here is John Bisignano.
Ricardo Patrese has made it into his pit. Everyone is up in the air. The car is on an extremely fast pit stop. This is one of... Sorry, Nelson Piquet, excuse me. The excitement down here was incredible. They were throwing tires over my head at the time I was trying to see the driver. It was extremely fast. He has new Pirellis on there and a half load of fuel. The car is very light and going extremely well engine-wise. He was slowing down. That's why he wanted to come in and get the tires so that he would not lose any more position.
That surprised you, Derek, to see them make a tire change. I would have thought Pirelli, known for good tire wear, would not be expecting a change.
Well, that is a run against the normal form, because if anybody goes the full length, it is those Pirelli runners. But the man who can read his tires as well as anybody here is Nelson Piquet. And remember, most of the race is still left to run. If he feels slow now, that's why he made the decision. Rather than stay out for another half of the race and lose time every single lap, he decides to stop right now, get some more speed in the car with new tires, and away you go again.
Watch Ayrton Senna comes flashing out of the Perotada and onto the first straightaway, reaching up over 190 miles an hour, maybe faster as these cars get lighter. They started with 250 to 300 pounds of fuel, and they've burned off about half of that by this point. We have 30 laps in the book of 67 scheduled as you watch Nigel Mansell.
This is where all the action is. Patrese is way ahead. Mansell is really holding station with Senna. But Senna, every time he comes down this front straight, you see him look in his mirrors. Left to right, worried about Andrea de Cesaris in the Jordan 4. Who the thunk it?
Exactly. Nigel Mansell is now 17.9 seconds behind teammate Ricardo Patrese. Oh, there is J.J. Leto out of the Dallara. Remember, it was his car that was overheating that caused the first of 2 aborted starts. He's got his right front wheel off the ground, but I think that may just be where he's sitting.
Yes, and the car very hot. We see another track marshal turns the extinguisher on. I hope it needs it, because those that fire extinguisher foam does so much damage to these cars, so I really hope it was needed.
Now Ricardo Patrese closing in on, that's Nigel Mansell closing in, I believe, on Satoru Nakajima in the Tyrrell. And behind him, Ayrton Senna is able to close up as Mansell is blocked by the slower car ahead of him.
We always heard how good Senna is in traffic, but Mansell definitely lost out here. Mansell gets the tow, but Senna is right behind him.
See if Senna will try to outdrag him into the corner. Looks like the Tyrrell has good straight line speed, though. Nigel has just pulled up alongside. Those are 3 wide right now. The Tyrrell is out screened to your right. Now he drops back, and Senna will go side by side with Mansell into turn 1.
Oh, you hold your breath when you see people like that try to go wheel to wheel, because sometimes they don't give each other enough room and you expect to see cars jump in the air. But Senna and Mansell at it again, but both cars are still on the racetrack.
They have a long history of coming together. They shook hands last year, decided they would bury the hatchet. But once you get behind the wheel in a race, all that is forgotten. Senna right there on Mansell's gearbox.
And all that action came about because Mansell lost about 2 car lengths lapping Satoru Nakajima. How things can change.
The running order is Patrese now by 18.4 seconds over Mansell, followed by Alesi, Senna, de Cesaris. Let's find out more about what's going on with the Jordan team. Here's John again.
Bob, you were speaking earlier of Andrea de Cesaris and his speed out on the circuit. One of the reasons he's doing so well is that he risked a somewhat bizarre tire combination. On the left side of his car, he has Goodyear B-type tires. On the right side of his car, he has a softer C-type tire. It seems that it has given him a real advantage. The B is a little bit harder and is used much harder around the sweeping right-hand turns here in Mexico. Obviously, some other people wish that they had maybe risked the same.
And once again, Ayrton Senna and Nigel Mansell go wheel to wheel into those first two turns, named for another Mexican race driver, Moises Solana.
Oh, we take a deep breath in here. We saw Frank Williams take a deep breath. Remember, he's watching what you're watching. He sees everything that goes on. But Mansell is struggling to hold off Senna. But look what he does down the front straight. Moves down the inside. Always makes Senna go down the outside, which is the hardest thing. And so far has been impossible. But this is where the action is.
Let me reset that order now that our electronic timing and scoring system has caught up with it. It is Patrese, Mansell, Senna, Alesi, De Cesaris in fifth, Roberto Moreno in sixth, the final points-paying position. Bertrand Gachot in seventh with the De Cesaris sister car. There are 10 points for a victory, 6 for second, 4 for third, 3 for fourth, 2 for fifth, 1 for sixth, and all 16 races will count this year, unlike years past when only your best 11 finishes counted.
Okay, this is where Senna set Mansell up the last time. He was a little bit quicker off his corner, got up behind him, got into a toe, but I don't think he's close enough this time. I don't think he's going to make an attempt.
John Alesi is closing up behind Ayrton Senna in the meanwhile.
Look at this snake down the front. Oh, Senna comes down the inside now. He's not going to make a pass, but he's telling Mansell, hey, I'm here. I'd also try the inside.
And Alesi has gotten around Nakajima. And he may soon be a part of this battle. There comes Alesi. Nakajima following him, holding up the parade that is Andrea De Cesaris and Roberto Moreno.
Remember, Mansell has this electronic gearbox. When he's changing up, he does not have to take his foot off the throttle. He can keep it down all the way and just flick the little lever behind the steering wheel, and it keeps changing up gears. Whereas Senna has to change like you and I do in a street car, on and off the throttle and on and off the clutch. So Mansell does have an advantage, but of course it's the overall package that makes you fast or slow.
In fact, after Senna's crash and flip in Friday, he said that was the reason he lost control, was that he went into the Perotada too quickly, reached down to drop down a gear, and that's when the car started to get away from him. He overcorrected, went into a lazy spin, hit the tire barrier, and flipped over.
Now Mansell gets a bit of breathing room here. We don't know why that is. Maybe it was just that classic. He needs to be away from the defensive driving to be able to maintain that little edge ahead of Senna. Remember, he drove left and right down the straight. That takes time. That costs you time. Now he doesn't have to do it, and Alesi is creeping up on Senna.
Working lap number 35, it is Patrese, Mansell, Senna, Alesi, De Cesaris, Moreno, Gachot, Piquet, Bernard, Blundell, Morbidelli, Suzuki, Boutsen. This man, Ricardo Patrese, more motivated, and he is showing it on the racetrack here in Mexico City. He leads teammate Nigel Mansell by 25 seconds and change. Mansell with a small lead over Ayrton Senna in third. We are working lap number 36. Excuse me, lap number 37. There will be 30 laps remaining. Ricardo Patrese looking for his fourth career Formula One victory in 214 starts. He won at Monaco in 1982, in South Africa at Kyalami in 1983, and most recently in 1990 at Imola in Italy. But as the Williams team can tell you, don't count your chickens before they're hatched. Nigel Mansell led 68 of 69 laps 2 weeks ago in Montreal and then stopped dead on the racetrack. There's Andre De Cesaris in the green Jordan with that Ford V8. He has moved up to fifth position, ahead of both Roberto Moreno and Nelson Piquet, who have ostensibly more powerful Ford engines. There's one of the LaRousse cars. I believe that is Eric Bernard. A lot of sadness in the pits. The LaRousse team has apparently been told their engine deal has been pulled for lack of payment for their engines, and that the mechanics have been told they better start looking for other work. We don't expect to see the LaRousse team in France in July.
The budgets have got so high to be competitive now that teams like LaRousse or the AGS teams or the Fond Metal team, they're struggling really to just get enough money to run these races. And really what has put the budget so high is not just the engine program you need, it's the incredible amount of testing you have to do away from the racetrack. Mile after mile after mile. Of course, that costs money, but the amount of testing they do is so much more than in the years past. That has really contributed to such enormous budgets.
Ricardo Patrese, father of 3 children, collects miniature electric chains and pocket watches back home in Italy.
Were they chains or trains?
Trains. And he says he never lets the kids play with them either.
Earlier this year, Nigel Mansell was quoted as saying, there will be races this year that we will disappear. We're watching one of them right here, Riccardo Patrese. Unfortunately, Mansell would rather be himself, but Patrese giving a Williams demonstration here.
Mansell has closed up just a little bit on that last lap. You see the gap there. Senna has closed up on Mansell once again. Oh, Eric Bernard pulls aside to let the race leader come through. And you can tell the difference between state-of-the-art Formula One engine technology, the V10 Renault in Riccardo Patrese's car, and Eric Bernard just behind using a somewhat off-the-shelf Ford V8 Cosworth power plant that has been in Formula One service for many, many years. There is just not a comparison.
Patrese's head bobs and weaves under braking there. There's actually a difficulty when you lead a race as convincingly as he does here to keep yourself chasing somebody. Chasing somebody keeps your attention level a lot higher. So Patrese has to really concentrate now on building a lead. When you slow down, you make mistakes. So he's building this lead almost all the time. But really, he has two problems: staying on the track and maintaining his concentration when he's so far ahead.
There's Nigel Mansell coming under fire from Ayrton Senna as he has the last few laps. Right behind Senna is the green Jordan Ford of Andrea de Cesaris.
Right behind Alesi. Alesi still hanging on there. We see these two swap positions every now and then. But Moreno, who is right up behind de Cesaris at one stage, seems to have dropped back out of our picture.
John Alesi cranks the helmet over to the right as he comes through the El Estadio section of the racetrack, the stadium portion. Slowest part of the track, lots of turns, the maximum crowd here on hand. Getting a good look at these race cars.
Slowest part of the racetrack, slow being 50 miles an hour, which is relatively slow, but then all through these S's, these cars constantly accelerate. Take a gear, accelerate, take fourth gear, accelerate, and on the last left-hander, just here, they exit at just above 125 miles an hour to reach 165 miles an hour before they brake right here. But Andrea de Cesaris still hounds the Ferrari. What a sight for team owner Eddie Jordan.
Low angle coming off La Ferrara. And now Andre de Cesaris has a shot. Now Alesi will pull around the Lotus of Johnny Herbert. I was going to say that Herbert might hold up Alesi long enough for de Cesaris to close up.
And Mansell, of course, gets by Mika Hakkinen in the other Lotus. Both Lotus cars off the pace, but running together with two of probably the most talented young talents here on the race today.
Mika Hakkinen, just 22 years of age, who put on a spectacular show at Phoenix. Spun twice and was still in the thick of it in the race until the engine let go with a spectacular burst of flames. Johnny Herbert had such a great run with the Benetton team a few years ago before he was let go by the team, is now back in Formula One, and we're glad to see him. There's Nigel Mansell, Ayrton Senna flicking back and forth in the background.
Here's Nigel Mansell. We saw Canada 2 weeks ago. He was waving to the crowd on what he thought was his victory lap when the car stopped at the hairpin. Now, we spoke earlier of this computer virus, which they believe attacked the system. They've had it here this weekend, too, and now they're beginning to think that there's an area in the electronic management of this car that if you go too slowly, it cuts the car off. Now they're beginning to think that Mansell ran too slowly at the hairpin, and the computer might have read it as being, hey, we need to switch this engine off, which is what happened, because the engine and the gearbox got switched off, and Mansell lost the race.
After all that grief that Mansell took about possibly going too fast, he had plenty of tires and plenty of fuel left at the end. The car just quit on him. He runs in second place now to his teammate in a potential Williams 1-2, and there are dark clouds overhead here in Mexico. And there are dark, billowing clouds overhead. We may not finish this race before the rains fall for the third day in succession. There you see Nigel Mansell in his Williams being pressed hard by Ayrton Senna. Behind them, the lap Ligier of Terry Boutsen.
We saw Nigel put his hand up and wipe his visor, so there's obviously something bothering him on that visor. Now, we have had rain every day here, and they said if it does rain, this track gets so treacherous, so slippery, so dangerous, that if it does rain, unlike any other Formula One race, they will stop the race. Stop it, red flag the race, everybody will have to change tires. And that's an unusual situation in Formula One.
In fact, we had rain on the back portion of the racetrack and not the front during the late moments of yesterday's qualifying session. And we had cars flying off in every direction. To see a Formula One car on slicks, on water, is to watch a beast totally out of its element. They are absolutely uncontrollable.
Uncontrollable at such low speed. You can't imagine they're out of control, but they do such an amount of damage, even at low speed when you get heavy rain.
Mansell continues as we work the 42nd lap of 67 scheduled. So 25 laps remain, and it's a battle against Mother Nature as well as their fellow competitors today.
And Mansell against Senna. This is when it's really hard work. The car is not exactly the way you like it, but you have to draw on everything it can give you, as well as your concentration and your physical ability to hold off someone like Senna, who's hounding you every time you move left or right. So this is when Mansell is earning his money right here.
It is a Williams 1-2, but it has not been a weekend without some consternation for the Williams team. Frank Williams and a few of his crewmen were flying down from Dallas to here in Mexico City, and the cowling came off of their private jet, striking the tail of the airplane. They had to make an emergency landing, but they got the airplane fixed and continued their trip, arriving about a day late here in Mexico City. But it doesn't show in their performance. It is Patrese by 25 seconds over teammate Mansell right there in a Williams 1-2.
How different it would be if this was a battle for the lead, but total domination by Patrese, but Senna, again, inches up behind Mansell. I don't think he'll make a move, because if Mansell thought it, he looks down the inside, then he goes to the outside. See the way Mansell takes the middle of the road line? That's to block Senna. He's entitled to do that. He's leading. He can pick whatever line he wants. Senna has a hard job to do.
9 cars remain on the lead lap. Mansell looking down at his mirrors, wanting to know where Senna is.
Of course, that's a major key when you're driving defensively. You have to know where the opposition is. So Mansell has a little glance in the mirror, and if he sees him on his inside, he tightens up his line before he enters the apex of the corner, which of course makes it almost impossible for somebody to pass.
Ricardo Patrese set the fast lap of the race way back on lap 24, 18 laps ago at 1 minute 19.1 seconds. That's almost a second and a half slower than the lap record, but right now he doesn't need to go any faster as these guys chase him. Mansell and Senna.
And Alesi is gone from the race. He has not appeared on our board. We have not seen him in our picture, so we're going to try and get information on where Jean Alesi has disappeared to.
Our pictures, once again, are coming to us from the Mexican network Imavision, so we don't have control over the cameras. Alesi now shows up 1 lap down, way back in 9th position in the Ferrari, running behind Eric Bernard, who is the last car on the lead lap.
So we look back behind Senna. That's the Cesaris that we see way back there, and his mirrors are being filled by Roberto Moreno, who's got his teammate Nelson Piquet right behind him in 6th place. And now remember, Piquet stopped for tires, so he's on his way up, where some of the people who are struggling are on the way back.
Mansell now has a lapped car between himself and Senna to give him a little breathing space. The gap is 24.8 seconds. Patrese to Mansell. Senna right there, as you see, about 3 or 4 tenths behind Mansell. 7 seconds further back is De Cesaris in 4th. And now we've got an engine problem on Nelson Piquet's car. I think it's an engine.
Major trouble for Piquet. I'm not sure he slowed down very much. That left rear corner, something wrong.
Could be a wheel problem on Nelson Piquet's Benetton.
It looks like it is a wheel problem, maybe a puncture, but he doesn't seem to have slowed down very much. No, I don't think it's a wheel problem. He's going way too fast for that stuff. But Piquet definitely on his way to the pit lane, if he even knows that he has this problem yet.
I don't see any deflation in the tire. Oh, he could have a real problem now. He's coming onto a fast part of the racetrack, and if that engine, if that tire lets go on him, he is punishing that left rear wheel.
He sees it. He's pulling off. This is the entrance to the pit lane. Piquet knows he's in trouble. Doesn't look like the left rear tire. We can't see exactly what it is, but John Bisignano is down in the pit lane, and we'll catch up with what's wrong with Nelson Piquet, who's on his way to the Benetton pit.
He has the whole length of the pit lane to run. He's coming in hot. I think Nelson Piquet perhaps thinks he can get back in this. Let's get down to John.
Nelson Piquet is coming in very hot. They're giving some attention to those rear tires, as you were saying. There's smoke is pouring off of these. No, there is a definite problem with that left rear. I hope someone can notice all that smoke. Yes, they're taking the left rear off again, having a little bit better of a look at it. All kinds of great smoke pouring out of the back of this. The caliper almost looks translucent. They can't get near it. They're asking for asbestos gloves. Nelson Piquet, what a fight back up into the point. Now stopped dead in the Benetton pit.
There you see Nigel Mansell with some breathing space over Ayrton Senna. Piquet drops out of 8th place in the points at the point of that pit stop. There you see him getting out of his car. The 3-time world champion will call it a day. This is the team that has lost perhaps the most legendary designer in all of Formula One, John Barnard. His place will be taken by an American, Gordon Kimball. The Benetton team continues, as does Nigel Mansell on the racetrack, but Riccardo Patrese still holds a 25-second your way live at 7:50 a.m. Eastern Time, Sunday, July 7th. On the racetrack, Nigel Mansell circulates in second place behind this man, his teammate, Riccardo Patrese, and the gap has come down just a little bit. Mansell has reached that fast lap at 1:18.4, still not a record, and he has cut the lead of his teammate to 22 seconds. There's Riccardo Patrese, who can afford to let the clock run just a little bit now. We're working lap number 48 of 67. 19 laps remain.
We mentioned earlier that Jean Alesi had some trouble. He is, in fact, out of the race right across from our booth here. The Ferrari team are packing up everything and about to send everything back to France a little bit earlier than they expected.
That'll mark the second race in a row in which neither Ferrari has finished. Your order on the racetrack, 7 cars on the lead lap. Riccardo Patrese by 22 seconds over Nigel Mansell. Ayrton Senna now 2 seconds behind Mansell. He's dropped back some. Andre de Cesaris 6 seconds behind Senna. He is closing in. Roberto Moreno 2.5 seconds behind de Cesaris. Bertrand Gachot in the 6th and final points-paying position, 14 seconds down from 5th. And Eric Bernard cruising along in the LaRousse Lola, a team that appears to be doomed for the 1991 season. He is 28 seconds behind Gachot and about to be lapped by our leaders.
And we continue to watch Patrese go down past the front straight here, read his pit board. But the fastest man on the racetrack is his teammate, Nigel Mansell, and he will get that information every time he passes his pit board, and he has radio contact. They will tell him how far ahead of second place he is. So he now knows Mansell is catching him.
Want to jinx him by talking about victories too soon, but Derek mentioned it earlier. I don't think anything would please the Formula One fraternity more than to see Riccardo Patrese win a race here in Mexico City.
More Grand Prix, I believe, than any other man here. Oh, Moreno. Moreno is heading for the pit lane, and he, another Pirelli runner. Let's go down to John Bisignano.
Roberto Moreno comes streaming into the pits. This looks like a normal pit stop. The Pirelli's come off the car. An awful lot of oil all over his visor. I don't know who he's been following, but whoever it was giving him one heck of an oil bath. Very, very fast pit stop down here in the Benetton pit.
He was following Andre de Cesaris, and he had 14 seconds on Bertrand Gachot, but I doubt that Roberto Moreno was able to get back out in 5th place. We'll update you on that next time by. Meanwhile, there is your leader in second in this group. Eric Bernard in the LaRousse, followed by Riccardo Patrese. Outpaced by his teammates by a total of 10-1. And yet here he is leading the way. I think that says something about the strength of character in the Williams team. They give their men equal machinery and then just tell them to go out and do their best. Recall 2 weeks ago in Montreal, but Patrese's car broke in the morning warm-up. Because Nigel Mansell is the clear #1 driver on the team, he had first dibs on the spare car. He did not release it, or the team did not release it to Riccardo Patrese, who did not get any laps in his car at all in warm-up. He went out in the car in the race, ran a strong second until a late pit stop, dropped him back, and he wound up 4th, I believe.
And that's one of the difficult things that Formula One teams have to decide on. When you have 2 star drivers and there's only one spare car, we see one of the LaRousse cars in a lot of trouble here. The track marshal trying to get him away from danger points. But one of the LaRousse cars, we can't see the number, we can't see the driver's helmet. But another sad ending to a difficult weekend here for the LaRousse team.
As I mentioned, we don't expect to see the LaRousse team at their home Grand Prix in France in July. I believe that was a Guri Suzuki's car, because I think that Eric Bernard still circulating. He has now been lapped. He is 1 lap down to this man, number 6, Riccardo Patrese.
What I said about the spare car, it is a difficult situation for a team when you have 2 star drivers, but Mansell went to Williams on the understanding that he would be the clear #1. Patrese has exerted himself really above Mansell in the speed element so far this year, but Mansell in his contract still says He decides when he has a spare car, which is what happened.
Let me correct myself. Patrese was third at Montreal 2 weeks ago. Right now, he is first. The only place that counts in Formula One, Riccardo Patrese, with a gap now under 20 seconds. Gachot, Bertrand Gachot, has skidded off the racetrack in one of the Jordan cars. He was running in 5th position at the time. That's going to be a heartbreak for the Jordan team. They were in the points.
My word, look what's going to come and take that car out of there. I hope they do it very gently, but what a disaster for Eddie Jordan. I say disaster because this team needs its points so badly, and they were in the point-paying position when Gachot flew off the road. He did this in practice also, but the 7-Up Jordan car, the office is closed for the day.
Well, I wouldn't want to be the next guy to skid off at that point with that monster sitting there. Now there is Riccardo Patrese just about to put a lap on Roberto Moreno's Benetton. Moreno has stopped for new tires. Patrese has not stopped, and it appears will not the rest of the way. We have about 14 laps remaining. Nigel Mansell has just broken the lap record in second place at 1:17.6. He has brought it down by 0.3 of a second. The gap to his teammate just 16.8 seconds now. So Riccardo Patrese may start to feel some heat from his teammate before this one is over.
And coming up to lap, Roberto Moreno. We saw Moreno stop about 5 laps ago for new tires. I would have thought he could go a little bit faster than this, but Patrese now about to lap Moreno. I hope Moreno lets him go.
Roberto Moreno sitting in for the injured Sandro Nannini, who recently got his Italian driver's license back and expects to do a little bit of competitive driving in the very near future.
But Moreno, who really has done an excellent job filling in here in this Benetton car. Really the best drive he has ever had in Formula One. But now Patrese gets right up under his rear wing, gets a nice tow, pulls out, slingshots by, and passes, puts a lap on Moreno without any drama.
That will leave 4 cars still on the lead lap. John Bizignano in the pit lane has an update. John?
Bob, the first word from the Ferrari people, they are sorry they can't give us an exact reason for John Alesi going out of the race, so they don't have the car back. But the first report was some kind of electrical. Now, another thing, and I want Derek to listen to this. When Patrese goes by, his engine has a totally different song than that of Mansell. I don't think he's slowing too much, but there is definitely a totally different song out of those 2 Renault engines. Let's hope he doesn't have a problem.
Well, of course, the only thing that could cause that is something broken in the exhaust system. That can lose a little bit of power, but remember, when you have 10 cylinders and you lose one, it's not like having a V8 or a V6 as we've seen. When you lose one of those, you lose a huge amount of power. But Mansell, we know, is the fastest man on the racetrack, running a lot faster than Patrese, our race leader.
The gap is now down to 15.6 seconds with 13 laps to go. There'll be 12 when Riccardo Patrese flashes by this time. And as you mentioned earlier, Derek, he has to know that Mansell is coming.
Oh, he knows. His team will have him well informed on exactly what's going on. But Patrese, to me, looks well in control and has been most of the afternoon. I mean, even when he was trying to pick off Senna and Mansell, he really didn't have much trouble. So really, he was even in control then when he wasn't in the lead.
What a battle Patrese and Mansell had as Patrese tried to overcome his teammate for the lead. Mansell didn't want to give it to him. They both locked up their wheels at least once, but Patrese came out on top. The Gas Weekend here on ESPN Live. We'll have we will have the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I'll be there with David Hobbs, bringing you part of a complicated, unilateral, worldwide, unified broadcast at 9:50 a.m. Eastern Time. And we'll have an update from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, an update in Saturday Night Thunder here on ESPN. And then at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, we will have the finish of one of the great sports car classics of all time, the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So join us for that. On the racetrack here at Mexico City, the Grand Prix of Mexico has come down to teammates Riccardo Patrese and Nigel Mansell. Patrese flashes across the start-finish line with a 10-second gap over his teammate, who has lowered fast lap of the race now again to 1:17.3. Nigel Mansell is definitely closing up on Riccardo Patrese.
We saw just a couple of minutes ago Mark Blundell, who dropped out of a very good and strong 7th place for the Brabham Yamaha team. I know they hope they can get points because it will help them in this pre-qualifying situation, which will be changed as of the British Grand Prix. But Mark Blundell looked like an engine problem. We saw him pull off the racetrack.
10 laps remain. 10 vueltas. Patrese. I'm tempted to say the gap is still 10.8 seconds, but I'm sure it's less than that now. Patrese over Mansell. Ayrton Senna 11 seconds behind Mansell and apparently out of it in third place. Andre de Cesaris 13 seconds behind Senna, so third place looks secure. Roberto Moreno 48 seconds behind de Cesaris and a lap down to the 4 cars that remain on the lead lap.
Mansell is still in the hard work situation. He took a second a lap off Patrese's lead for 4 laps in a row. He's 10 laps to go. He's 10 seconds behind. This could be a battle yet.
Across the finish line he comes. Let's get a comment from John in the pit lane.
Well, not such an unusual sight. Ferrari packing up early to go back to Italy and the continent where the Grand Prix season really becomes hardcore. This is the second Grand Prix in a row for the Francine Olsen Ferrari is in the transporters early. They're not used to this. Maybe the managerial problems at Ferrari will continue to plague the team and their Grand Prix results.
Just 3 weeks ago, Ferrari fired their team manager, Cesare Fiorio, replaced him with a 3-man committee, but things certainly haven't improved much for Ferrari in the 2 races since. There you see Ayrton Senna, the defending world champion, who will not, it would appear, get another victory today after winning the first 4 races of the season.
And a lonely day for Senna, which is really most unusual. A little bit of action to start when he tried to gain some position. A little bit of action with Mansell in the middle. Now Mansell is just driven away from him. Nobody behind him, nobody ahead of him. So an unusual, lonely day for Senna. Usually when he has his lonely days, he's so far ahead of everybody. But now he's a long way behind.
We have 12 cars still in the running of the 26 that started. And they are pretty evenly spread out around this 2.74-mile circuit. There is Frank Williams in the same position he was 2 weeks ago, watching his men run 1-2. Then it was Mansell first and Patrese second. Now it is Patrese first and Mansell closing in. The gap, 9.2 seconds.
If it continues as it is, I'm not sure there's enough laps left for Mansell to make up the deficit. We don't know what's wrong with Patrese or if there is anything wrong with Patrese. Maybe, we see Mansell in the picture now for the first time in a long time. We don't know whether Patrese is controlling the race or whether he has some sort of a small problem.
The gap now down to 8 seconds. Patrese being chased by his teammates. This is going to be a great finish. I said 2 weeks ago in Montreal, it'll be tough to top that race, but it might yet again, and it may be the Williams team. It almost certainly is the Williams team that will be the chief protagonist in yet another Formula One drama.
Bob, you said it earlier, there are no team orders here, so if Mansell catches him, it's going to be every man for himself to try and win this thing, but Patrese still looks as if he has just enough of a cushion.
The car is handling so well. You saw him stay just about 1.5 feet off of the curb there in the Peraltada, right where he wanted to put it. Nigel Mansell flashed across the back of your screen. We'll get another measure of the gap. Mansell 7.2 seconds behind his teammate. 60 laps complete, 7 to go.
7 laps and 7 seconds. So if it continues as it has over the last 10 or 15 laps, Mansell will catch Patrese. From what we can see at the moment, he does have maybe enough time.
Mansell looking for a possible 17th career victory. Patrese looking for his 4th. And it will almost certainly go to a Williams driver today. It had better after what happened in Montreal 2 weeks ago.
And I would say everybody at the Marlboro McLaren camp hopes that Mansell does catch Patrese and hopes they do get into a battle and hopes they do bang wheels. But look at Mansell, sets yet another new track record at a 16.938. Mansell can see Patrese and he's doing everything he can to catch him.
To give you a sense of perspective, Mansell just ran a lap in this race, lap number 60. 0.3 of a second under his qualifying performance with a special qualifying engine, with the special qualifying sticky tires. Nigel is absolutely torching this racetrack.
Now, earlier on, the car was not set up to go fast enough on a full fuel load. Now the fuel load's lighter. Mansell's car is handling better. Patrese has done the opposite. On heavy fuel load, it was excellent, but now on a light fuel load, he's struggling to keep ahead of Mansell.
6 laps to go. 6 seconds the gap between the Williams teammate. Nigel Mansell draws ever closer. We'll be back for a great drama here in Mexico City in the Grand Prix. Come across the start-finish line, and we'll see whether Mansell has been able to close up. The Williams teammates are running 1-2, but Tracy has a little bit of traffic to deal with. That Mika Hakkinen in one of the Lotus cars ahead of him disposed of quickly. We have stopwatches on the gap. Nigel Mansell flashes across the line. 5 laps to go. 5 seconds now the difference.
This is boiling into a last lap scrap. We don't know what's wrong with Patrese. I don't think there's anything. I think his car on light fuel load is just not as good. It was excellent earlier. Mansell was the opposite. We said it earlier. He is catching him. There's Mansell, the last car in that last shot.
The tires appear to be free of any of the dark stripes that would indicate that the rubber is giving up.
What a pressure situation for Patrese to have led this race, to have come in here with knowing Mansell as the number 1, to have tried to prove this point that he is just as fast, if not faster, on a regular basis. Now, he's absolutely in the pressure cooker, is Riccardo Patrese.
Perhaps the oldest teammates on average in Formula One. Nigel, 37 years of age. Riccardo, 37 years of age. Let's learn more about this intra-squad battle from the pit lane in John Visignano.
Well, there's an awful lot of emotion down here in the Williams pit. The only thing they're worried about as far as Mansell is him overdriving his tires. The temperature is under 70 degrees now. It's cooled off tremendously, but he can overdrive those tires trying to catch his teammate. And Derek, my ear tells me that Riccardo Patrese's motor is definitely off song. Obviously, it's not costing him an awful lot of power, but there's definitely a difference between these two V12 Williams.
If I was Nigel Mansell's manager, and the gap is now down to 4.5 seconds with 4 laps to go, but if I was Nigel's manager, I wouldn't care about overdriving the tires. I'd say drive the tires and the wheels off this thing. Remember, winning in Formula One is everything. Second is nothing.
The gap 4.5 seconds. When we come around, we will complete lap number 63. Excuse me, make that 64. There will be 3 laps remaining when the number 6 of Riccardo Patrese flashes across the start-finish line.
Pressure cooker situation. Patrese is in it. He knows Mansell is catching him. Don't make a mistake. Get up behind traffic. Don't make a mistake. He's desperate for a win. He deserves a win after what we saw today. But there's Mansell. There he is. Now there's only him, and I believe that's Nakajima, or is it Modena, between Mansell and Patrese.
Stefano Modena, Satoru Nakajima, one of the cars that is out of the race. 11 cars continue to circulate. They are Patrese, Senna, De Cesaris, Moreno, Eric Bernard, Gianni Morbidelli, Terry Boutsen, Mika Hakkinen, Johnny Herbert, and Stefano Modena. Now let me take that back. Satoru Nakajima is still out there. We have 12 cars out there. Both Tyrrells are still moving around. And the gap is 3.3 seconds with 3 laps to go. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that this means they will hit the finish line together.
My word, this race in the middle of it settled down so much with Patrese and so much control and very little happening, and suddenly it all begins to happen. Mansell comes to life, the car is very good, allows him to drive it hard, and he's gaining about a second a lap on Patrese, who still leads. But look at Mansell now. Now look at the gap.
You would know better than I, Derek, but I think when one race driver gets another one in view, all of a sudden there is new life in that right foot and in the hand. Let's get down to the pit lane in John Visignano.
The drama down here even gets more thick. We just had the Renault engineers and Patrick Head, the chief engineer of Williams, with a huge discussion. Very calm, I may say, but it was a very emotional discussion in the garage. They're trying to find out exactly what they were speaking about. But as you can understand, right now, they don't have time to tell anybody except themselves to try and figure out what's going on.
2 laps remain. The gap, 2.3 seconds between teammates Riccardo Patrese and Nigel Mansell in a classic finish to the Grand Prix of Mexico.
Remember what happened last year when Mansell caught Berger on the last lap, drove around the outside of him at the Peraltada in a most dramatic passing maneuver. So Mansell is not shy about sticking his nose in where other people wouldn't at the end of a race. Look at the gap now. Mansell within car length of Patrese.
Oh, and Patrese is not going to want to let him by. You said earlier, Derek, that Patrese would remember the hard time that Mansell gave him when Patrese passed for the lead. I think the Lion of England can expect a hard time in return when he tries to pass his Italian teammate.
I hate to mention the pressure cooker again, but Mansell is turning up the heat with every lap. He sees them. Patrese knows he's there. But look at Mansell. He is driving the wheels off that thing. You see the back jerk out on the power. Mansell using everything that car can give him.
Well, you can see him closing up. The gap will be less than a second when they come across the start-finish line to begin the last lap. And you won't be seeing Nigel Mansell waving to the crowd this week the way he did 2 weeks ago in Montreal. Front left corner down on the deck, throwing up a shower of sparks. They come across the finish line 1 second apart.
Remember, it's under braking. He can get him. Now, he's not going to be able to do it here, but he's got to close up if he has a realistic chance of trying to make the pass. This is the second, third gear complex. He's got to get close to him here. But Patrese, unless he can block the braking maneuver, can hang on here. Mansell's not close enough.
Patrese is fourth in the World Championship. Mansell is seventh, hoping to recoup those points that he could feel in his gut 2 weeks ago in Montreal. The only man between him and victory is his teammate.
Slowest corner on the racetrack, 50 miles an hour. Now they accelerate up through the gearbox. Third gear. He backs off just a little bit here for the left-hander. Now it's acceleration. All the way hard down straight. Fourth gear, fifth gear. Mansell's not going to do it. He's not close enough.
They take top gear right about here. One more set of corners. They flash CDSs. Now they take top gear as they come out onto the backstretch. You can see the interval. Once more to La Peraltada, and I think I have to agree with you, Derek. I don't think Mansell's going to be able to close it up. But what a day for the Williams-Renault team, for Frank Williams, confined to a wheelchair by an automobile accident years ago, has watched his team drive the wheels off their cars to finish 1-2 here in the Grand Prix of Mexico. There is Frank.
Isn't that interesting? Frank just about musters a smile. That's how serious Formula One is. He doesn't consider it a great victory. It's just a job well done. Let me go home.
Frank Williams has seen some desperate moments in Formula One. In the old days, he saw some of his drivers, one of his best friends, Piers Courage, killed in a car that Frank fielded in Formula One, but he persevered, brought money into the sport, brought marketing into Formula One in a way that rivals the late Colin Chapman with the Lotus team. And now he has a 1-2 performance here today in 1991, and well-deserved for Riccardo Patrese and Nigel Mansell. We'll be back.
The Western Hemisphere on the 1991 World Championship Grand Prix calendar. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of Mexico has been brought to you by Mobil 1 Synthetic Motor Oil. Isn't your car worth the extra protection? By Acura Automobiles. Experience precision-crafted performance. And by Casio. Watches that do more than keep time, they keep you ahead of the game.
The race is done and the fiesta has begun in the Autódromo Hermanos Ricardo y Pedro Rodriguez in Mexico City. Riccardo Patrese and Nigel Mansell have pulled off a smashing 1-2 for the Williams team. Here are the overall results. Patrese and Mansell, Ayrton Senna home third. Andre de Cesaris' Jordan stopped on the last lap, but he is classified fourth, one lap down. A big boost for the Jordan team. Roberto Moreno fifth for Benetton. Eric Bernard sixth for the LaRousse Lola team. That team may have a future after all. Gianni Morbidelli seventh, followed by Terry Boutsen in the Ligier, Mika Hakkinen in the Lotus, Johnny Herbert in the second Lotus car, Stefano Matida and Satoru Nakajima for Tyrrell. The driver's points show Ayrton Senna picks up 4 today, but Riccardo Patrese jumps from 4th to 2nd with 20 points. Nelson Piquet is 3rd, followed by Nigel Mansell, up from 7th to 4th. Alain Prost is 5th, followed by Gerhard Berger and Stefano Matida. Among the constructors, McLaren Honda leads by 54 to 33 over Williams-Renault, followed by Benetton, Ferrari, Tyrrell, and the Jordan Ford team. John Bisingato is down in the pit lane now with Frank Williams.
Frank Williams, your cars come roaring in here after a fantastic 1-2 victory. What are your emotions, sir?
I was counting the points, see where Senna is now.
The next race, well, this track seemed like it was yours. Canada seemed like it was yours. Was it the facility, or was it the fact that the development of the car and the engine has come together? Can you put on this performance anywhere?
I would say the next few races should see us quite competitive. But we know there's a modified McLaren coming and a modified Ferrari, so we can't sit on our bottoms.
Well, there's a man who can keep up with them. It's you, Frank. Congratulations.
Thank you, John. It's very nice. Thanks.
All right, thank you, John. Derek Daly joining us for your first Formula One broadcast. You brought us luck. A heck of a race.
Total domination by Williams, and I think the answer to his first question, where the only thing he's interested in is not his team's success, but how many points does Senna have. That epitomizes what they came here for, only business.
We move on to France, coming your way on Sunday, July 7th, live at 7:50 a.m. Please join us for that. I'm Bob Barsha for Derek Daly and John Bizignano. So long from Mexico City.